Hey, everybody, welcome back to View from the Top podcast, where we help growth-minded men who desire momentum in their business, their family, and their finance get through the valleys and up the mountain to their very own view from the top. Hey, just coming out of the recent holidays, you might have been around some aging parents, maybe your in-laws, maybe even that crazy old uncle, I'm not sure. But you may have noticed some things that concerns you. And you're beginning to think about, man, how do I approach and walk this journey with aging relatives? Well, Big A and I are going to try to take on this topic today. So let's get rolling. Big A, welcome to the podcast.
Come on, Wally. Thank you for having me.
That was a terrible intro. But we're going to roll with it anyway.
Hey, it was good. We're all here.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here.
I was listening to your intro a little bit. I have a question for you. I'm just curious. It's never the crazy aunt. It's always the crazy old uncle. I wonder where that started. You'd mentioned in the...
I have no idea. But you're right. It is the crazy uncle.
There's some whacked out
maybe it's
uncles
that crazy.
It's almost,
it could be the crazy cat aunt. Maybe so. I don't know.
I don't know. I've never heard that, but it's always the uncle. It's always the uncle. How did the aunts? Hey, I had one of my accountability partners came to me this week with a situation where his wife was offended at one of our get-togethers, a little get-together. And one of the guys made a wise crack, kind of a joke, kind of backhanded. He's kind of awkward anyway, and he was trying to be funny, but man, it hit him in the face. This thing, what he said, she took it to heart. She's crying at home, and he's trying to console her, and now he's out trying to fix it. I guess what I wanted to ask you before we start talking about this, do you fight Sonia's battles, or do you let her to do that? Like, how do y'all deal with that? She's upset about something. Do you just go take care of it, or do you just let her figure it out on her own?
Timely question. You didn't know this, but we just had a conversation about a couple weeks ago. We were kind of reminiscing and thinking back about our lives together. Been married, 30, working on 31 years. There are 2 times that I can remember very specifically where I should have and I didn't. Most all the other times she was capable and able to handle the situations, with counsel, of course, from me and others and all that. I'm definitely a proponent of people fighting their own battles, but I think that there's moments with our wives especially that there's 2 specifically where I should have stuck up for her is not even the appropriate thing to say. It was more than that, where I needed to go address some things as her husband and her advocate that I did not. And so, I've apologized for those since, but we talk about them now, and hopefully an opportunity like that ever comes again. Hopefully I go ahead and step out. But it happened, it was around some ministry things at church and, back in Michigan where we went to church and stuff, and I didn't, but I should have. So, but her daily battles, no, I don't fight them for her.
Yeah, I can't decide on this one either. We talked about it in our accountability group at length, and I was torn. I was like, man, does she need to be doing this on her own, or does her husband need to come to her defense? And I started thinking about Robin, and I'm big on protecting Robin. We've been together our whole lives, and I know you're big on protecting your wife as well. But then sometimes I've kind of stepped up, and Robin's like, hey, I got this. What are you doing? Like, I can take care of myself. And I'm like, dang, how do you know? It's like, it's kind of like listening to them. They don't want you to solve it. They just want you to listen. And the jury's still a little bit out on this one for me. I don't know if she should have called. You know what he did, though? He handled it. He called the guy, dealt with it, and so the guy had to go and apologize, and hopefully all the dust will settle before next week and everybody will be good. But I was just curious. It just kind of caught me, and we always we're going to talk about real things on this podcast. We're going to share our lives. We're going to tell what's going on and the way that we deal with it, and hopefully somebody will find some value. Which takes us into today, because I need all of your insight, all of your input. If you're listening out there today and you've gone through with aging parents, I'm dealing with it right now, myself, dealing with an aging mom. My mom is amazing. Wally, you know what I think of my mom, man. She's the amazing. Greatest thing since sliced bread. I love my mom. She is amazing. But she's also 90 years old. soon to be. She wouldn't mind me telling you that. She's proud of it because she's in good shape. And
I'd be proud if I turned 9
yeah,
years old.
yeah. She looks good, doesn't
Come on.
she? She's sharp as a tack. Matter of fact, I'm going to have her on the podcast here
She can
before
still
long.
cook too, man.
Yeah, she can cook. You
can whip it
enjoyed
up.
some of that lunch over there not
I
long
know, man.
ago.
She cooked me lunch a little while ago.
So,
You and I
yeah.
said so. It was great.
Yeah, so it's good. But, here's the thing. One of our ISI brothers gave us a question, and he said, when is it time for me to intervene with my aging parents? Mm-hmm. And I thought, man, his time couldn't have been any better to ask this question than I'm right in the thick of it. I think there's a lot of blessings that come with an aging parent, but there's a lot of challenges. And I didn't know about any of these challenges because, like Robin's mom and dad passed away. They were younger. And then my dad passed away completely healthy. My dad just got lung cancer and died in just a few months. And so we didn't have any situations there to deal with. But yeah, it's just all kind of challenges. How long, do you let them drive, and do they live with you, or do they sell their house, or what if they outlive their money? That's what my mom's worried about. My mom said, what if I live longer than my money? And I'm like, Mom, you're good. You don't have to worry about your money. We're good. And we're dealing with things too with our brothers and, about who takes care of her and who does this. And then there's a distance. I got a brother that lives in Florida, and man, it's just a lot of challenges, Wally. You're not quite there yet. You're not dealing with aging parents.
Well, I guess the question is like, with the question that was asked, when is it time to intervene with aging parents? I guess intervene is probably a real bold term, and that's maybe what he meant. But I know there's a lot of guys listening to this podcast that did just come off the holidays, and they sat with their parents and they started to see some things where they're like, ooh, but their parents are only like 70, right, 75, but they've started to recognize some things. And I want to be. This is really sad. But I want to use this as an example. It doesn't have anything to do with aging parents. And I think it just goes to show you what, anyway, you'll understand once I get done with the story. So I get a call yesterday from one of my friends that I made inside Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind. He's not in my group. He's in a different group. But we become fast friends and we talk, once a week typically. But anyway, he calls me on Monday. He texted me actually first. And he's like, hey, I need to talk. And that's cue for like, call me as soon as you can, right? Yeah. So I was in the middle of some meetings that were scheduled, so I waited 2 hours. I texted him back and I said, "Is it an emergency?" And he's like, "No, but something like that." And I was like, "Okay." So after my meetings were over, I called him right back, and he goes, "Man, I had a really good friend. He lives down in Florida." I said, "I have a really good friend, 37 years old, 4 children under the age of 10, with a wife, and about midnight on Sunday night." So, but it'd been Sunday morning, technically, like 1:00 in the morning, whatever, Sunday morning. He has having trouble breathing. He's got cold symptoms, trouble breathing. So he sends his wife to like Walgreens, whatever the pharmacy was open 24 hours to get him some meds and bring him back home. She gets back home and he's dead in bed. 37 years old and 4 kids. And long story short, he's got no life insurance, no plan, no nothing. Like his wife doesn't know anything about what's going on in his business. No, nothing. This guy's not, I just want to say, like, this guy's not an ISI. That doesn't change the fact that he's got, this family's got to deal with this stuff now. And it's a really sad situation. Doesn't matter if you're 37 or you're 65 or you're 90.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Like, our time's coming. And I think it's naive for any of us to think that our parents, because I know myself, that our parents have all the knowledge that they need to make the best wise decisions for themselves that they need to make as they get older. And I know for me, I had a conversation with my parents back when they turned, so my dad, they're 68 and 70-ish, so they're right in there. And so my mom turned 70 this last year. So yeah, they're right in there. Anyway, a couple of years ago, I remember we were gone back to New York and I was sitting down with them and we were eating dinner or something. And I just, in a very respectful way, I just asked, I was like, hey, how are you guys set up? Like your will and who takes care of things and, how's that all going to work? And they're like, yeah, we've been thinking about it, but we haven't done anything with it yet. And it's like, I've heard enough stories from other guys about their parents that have passed away at 60, 70, 80, and the parents,
prepared.
yeah, they haven't really like set anything up, and it's become a nightmare for the family. Some of them from health perspectives, right? Was dealing with health and wellness and making those decisions about care and where they stay. Some of the things you mentioned earlier, and some of it's financial. But at the end of the day, it all turns out to be relational. And so I think that for myself, it doesn't matter what age where they're at. I think there's a way for us to probably be proactive appropriately at a given age to intervene, right?
Starting with inquiring before we intervene,
Yeah, I
right?
like that word.
Like
That's a
you
good word.
did. Yeah. It's like, last week we talked about giving advice that's unsolicited.
Unsolicited, yeah, we did.
Yeah. And here we are talking about intervening with our parents, but I think being curious, asking leading questions, stoking the fire, right? Have you thought about this? Is this something like, especially, and I will say this, it's unsolicited, but if you're going to be the person dealing with it,
Yeah.
I think you have all the rights in the world to be asking. Now, if you're not, you can quickly dismiss yourself. But if you're the executor, it's like, I need to know what's going on. And I am to my mom's estate, and I'm on all the bank records. And, we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about some of the things that you need to do. But I think it's having the courage to have the conversation first. And that's what you did, right? And you've promoted some thinking within your dad and with your mom. And
they made some changes since then. They got some things in order, right?
Mm-hmm.
They did some work to do that.
Well, sure. Let's dive into that a little deeper, though, for a second, because that's an uncomfortable topic.
It is.
I know that my daughters, I've talked to them a little bit about this, not a lot, maybe not as much as I need to, but they're like, Dad, you're going to live forever. No, I'm not going to live forever. One day, we're going to have to deal with this, and it's better to be proactive than reactive. And we're even going through discussions now. How much do you tell them, when you got aging parents, and how much do the aging parents want to reveal what it is that they have, or their position that they're in, or their health concerns, So a lot of variables that we need to deal with.
You said something a little while ago I hadn't really thought about before. And I think this is a great, great question to early on respectfully address with our parents. It tells us a lot. That is, your question was, what are you responsible for? It's like, that's a great question because I don't know. What do my parents expect from me? Do they expect just to like, hey, I'm just going to go into a home when it's time? Do they expect to like come live with me? Do they expect that they're going to live with a brother or sister? Do they expect that they're just going to try to live on their own till they kick the bucket? What are their expectations? I think that's a great place to start. Like, what are they really thinking? It's hard to address. And if we don't have context, right, it's hard to even know where to begin. I think that's a great question to be able to ask your parents. Yeah. Hey, Mom, Dad, you're getting older. And what do you think life's like for you? Like, how does that work? Have you thought about, you can live on your own? You're going to how's that going to work? And just get how they're thinking, their mindset. It's going to help you have some real context. Here's the thing too, Wally, is
that changes and can change pretty rapidly.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Yeah, because my mom, 2 years ago, I lost my sister. She died unexpectedly of pancreatic cancer. And that really aged my mom considerably. It did, losing a child. And then right after that, my mom had a heart attack.
Yep.
That obviously aged her a little bit. Then she fell and had a brain bleed. And then she had hip replacement. And then she had a broken femur. All this happened in 24 months. And that takes its toll on your body, right? But here's the part now that's even more difficult than the physical aspect is the emotional side of it. It's like my mom's very independent, right? And she doesn't want to lose her independence. And so we're talking through those things now. And quite honestly, they don't look at things as rational as they get older as they did when they were younger. And so it's a difficult conversation to have. And so our hope in even sharing this episode with you is to get you thinking, right? We're not suggesting that you go out here and grab the, bull by the horns immediately, but you need to start thinking through these things and not get caught off guard, and having the right questions to ask and prompt them at the right time, not to fish to find out what they've got. That's not what I'm meaning at all. But if you are going to be involved in this, and I can promise you, it's going to affect you. You as a sibling, you and your siblings, it's going to affect all of you to some degree. And so you just need to start asking these questions. The other thing is dying intestate. If they don't have a will, I mean, that's a mess. And then, the kids are left there to fight over what's left. And I mean, my mom's even gotten specific down to naming certain things that go to the grandchildren and the children and how she wants it done. And, all those details. Thank God she's lived long enough to be able to think through all of these details, but you still can't even cover it all then. There's just still things today that we're dealing with. So, Wally, cover a little bit of some of the things that I know that we've talked about from a legal standpoint, some of the things that we should have in place.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about, having a will and some of those basic things. And I agree. I agree 100% that having a will is super important, and communicating ahead of time. You obviously it'd be great if your parents could communicate ahead of time who's responsible for that, who the executor is and of your estate and all that. Sometimes when I've talked to my parents about things, they're great. I love my parents. They're good people. There's something though about when I try to counsel them versus encouraging them to get someone else to counsel them, they tend to listen a little different. And so you might be experiencing that, right? You may be listening going, yeah, I've tried to talk to my parents. I'd encourage them, you don't have to be the counselor. You don't have to be the one with all the answers. And they may respect you more for that. If you help them, hey, can we help find someone that you could talk to that would, you could talk to confidentially and privately and get some of this stuff worked out. Some legal help. There's lots of those resources out there now that are good and quality, and there's even people that focus in elder care, right, to help people. So I think that there's, specifically from like a legal standpoint, just continuing to communicate in an appropriate way over time. Like every time you see him, it probably wouldn't be good to be like, "Hey, did you get that done yet?" You could text on you like,
yeah.
But like, there's an appropriate amount of time. And you said, "Hey, how'd that go?"
Sure.
Right? We just had this experience at Thanksgiving time where my parents are going through a difficult time right now with having another sibling that's living with them, and it's created some challenges for them. And we sat down with my mom and my dad. And at the end of that conversation, my brother and I did, and our wives, and just loved on them and worked to be an encouragement to them about the situation that they were in. In the end, my brother did something. He's my younger brother. He's bigger than I am, but he's younger anyway. And he did something I'd never seen him do before. My jaw almost hit the floor, and I was so proud of him. He said, we talked about what, we'd ask them questions and encourage them, and our dad came to this point where he was like, yeah, I need to do this. And my younger brother looked right at him like in all love and respect and said, I'm going to hold you accountable to that. Is that okay? And there's like this weird moment of silence where like he had never said that to dad before. No one had ever said that to dad before. And dad's like, yeah, you can hold me accountable to that.
That's good.
So my point is that like having these conversations, keeping them up, that communication, letting them know you care about them, you love on them, that it's important. And there's nothing better than most parents and most grandparents. You can play on the grandparents card a little bit. I'm just saying, like you can lean into that a little bit. They tend to get a little more emotional about their grandkids than they do their grown children, frankly. Just letting them know that, hey, this matters to them too. We want to keep the family together, like you mentioned. And just having good legal help with things written out, well documented, is a really important step to not having those challenges, some of those challenges, not the elevated challenges and the issues when things do come, regarded whether it's financial things, whether it's where you're going to live, whether it's, who's pulling the plug, right? If it comes down to having to make a decision about getting off a machine or not even. So there's a lot of things to work through there, and you don't have to be you. I'm talking about you, grown man in our audience listening to this. Like, I don't have to be everything to my parents, but I can encourage them on where they can get that help.
Well, I want to give just a little bit of advice. You know me, I'm very emphatic about a lot of things, and I'll put a stake in the ground. Be really careful doing that with early decisions because your circumstances change. There's financial situations that change, emotional well-being changes. So be pliable a bit when you're making these decisions and say, I know a lot of people that have made promises to their parents. I'd never put you in a nursing home for love nor money. I just want to caution you from making those kind of declarations because you don't know what the future is going to bring. You don't know that it wouldn't be more beneficial for your parents to have long-term care, to have people that are experienced. It also affects your relationship with your family when you've got other responsibilities. And it's tempered me a little bit because I've made some real strong proclamations in the past and I have to go back and revisit those. So I just want you to think through that, but be willing to discuss plans for your family, potential long-term care needs. There's a lot of options out there. There's home health care, there's assisted living, there's nursing homes, and don't rule those out as being bad. They can be very beneficial, very meaningful. There's other people there that are similar in nature. They're of like kind in regards to their interest. Their pace is different. So it could be very useful and beneficial. And right now, I'm pleased to say that we've got my mom here. We built her a house next door to us and she lives there. We get to check on her, but I'm not saying there won't be a time that she may need some other care. So just think through some of those things as we go. Wally, what about emotional support? How do you see our audience lending some type of emotional support to their aging parents?
I don't live, my parents live in New York State and upstate New York, and I live here in Tennessee. So there's 12-hour drive between us, hundreds of miles. But these past couple of years, I actually was working on my 2023 Come As You Be, which is almost finished. Come As You Be is a vision tool that we use in Iron Sharpens Iron, and we set a 3-year goal in 2020 of what 2023 was going to look like. It's really fun. It's how it's written out. It's really cool. Anyway, I know we've talked about the past episodes, but one of the things that I had in there as a relationship goal was I was going to be, I think I wrote it like, I have called my parents every other week and have a relationship with them that, is trusting and loving and whatnot. And I'm happy to report that I haven't called them every other week, every time, but enough, right? I quite a bit. And so my point in that is having regular contact with our parents as they get older. They're humans too. And they need love and nurture and support. And I think that if we don't visit them frequently, if we don't call them, if we don't even video chat, is a great way to it's inexpensive, for what it used to be. So just get your parents an iPad, for goodness sakes, and they can just, you can FaceTime with them. But man, it really gets them out of the feelings of isolation and loneliness, and that you truly care, because you do care about them. Just, I think sometimes we make excuses for ourselves that we don't know what to do, or we get frustrated, and those aren't really good excuses. They're not.
You know what, Wally?
Selfish.
I wasn't going to say this about this, but I'm just being honest with you. Some of my hardest moments in dealing with aging parents is, when I pull up in the driveway, if we've gone to a ball game or something, and I can see in my mom's house and she's sitting there at the corner of the table by herself. I'm like, oh God, it just kills me. It just kills me because my dad was there, 55 years or whatever, and now she's by herself. And I know we're right here next door, but that's the reason that we need to stay in contact with your parents. And some of y'all, I want to encourage you, maybe don't have the best rapport with your parents today. You know what? That doesn't dictate what can happen going forward. I want to encourage you to think through or pray through. And it's like, engage your parents and listen, let bygones be bygones. If y'all have had a disruptive life and, go, you know what, why can't we set that aside? Let's enjoy from today forward. And you can even tell them, say, listen, I listen to these two old guys on a podcast and they've encouraged me to call you. And I want to make it right. I want us to live out what we've got left in a meaningful way, in a way I can encourage you and help you, and set all that stuff aside. And they may not even deserve to be forgiven, or they may have done terrible things, or whatever it is in your life. If you've never made a concerted effort, we're going to encourage you today to make that concerted effort to reach out to your parents and build this rapport that we're talking about. The other thing that I think you need to do is really encourage your parents to be involved in whatever social activities or hobbies, or there's a lot of community programs out there that can help them stay mentally and emotionally active. And I know we're always telling my mom, hey, go to your Sunday school class or go over to your girlfriend's house and go sewing. Her and Robin sew these quilts all the time, and it keeps her interested. It keeps them active. It keeps them moving. And if you've tried that and you're like, they won't do anything, well, find them something to do, right? Just, you want to stimulate them. You want to keep them moving. But if you just get to the end of the rope and you can't do anything, you're like, man, I've done everything I know. Well, maybe there's professional help that you can get. A lot of people, as they get older, they experience depression. There's a lot of people that experience anxiety and a lot of other emotional disorders. And there's therapists out there, and we're happy to give you, Anthony Witt or Dr. Andy Garrett, and there's numbers of guys within our organization that maybe can help. And so reach out to us and let's see if we can help them get in a good place to where they really enjoy the remainder of their aging life.
Hey, Big A, you're at this different stage. We talked earlier, your mom's 90. I don't have the same today. I've had conversations with my parents, and I'm sure over time, obviously, I'll have to get more involved if they allow me to. The question that was asked of how do you know when to intervene? That leads me to believe that it's around, hey, things are getting really bad. Like right? Your mom is awesome. She just is. And I know it have been perfect. There's no such thing because we're all imperfect people.
Sure.
What are some of the things, like some practical things that you've had to do as your mom has released some of the responsibility to you?
Right.
And then in addition to that, like those are things where if you saw them, you might have had to intervene.
Yeah.
And so can you talk
question.
us through that, those listeners that have those parents that are really getting up there in years?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think intervention starts when you start seeing them make decisions that are not best for them personally, professionally, or physically. Thank goodness my mom still has all of her mental capabilities. She's sharp as a tack. It's physical has really gotten my mom, with physical ailments, and she's not as stable as she used to be. So now we're having to, she's walking with a cane or with a walker, and driving is kind of on the radar right now. It's like, is it time now to say you can't do that anymore? I think that the only way that you can recognize these things, though, is to have regular communication. Because if you're just periodically talking, you don't really see a decline. You don't really fully invested in their lives and the decisions that they're making. And so
I would challenge you real quick on that. I don't think you meant this. Just because you're not in community, sometimes I think you can actually see a bigger decline if you don't talk to them very often, because it's so stark. But the point is you have if you don't have any communication with them often, then you have no right to be able to speak into it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that can go both ways. If you're having intimate conversations and you know what's going on in their life, you can pay attention and there's more of your influence that's needed. I don't really like the word intervention. I know we're using that word.
Yeah, that was the question.
That feels so negative, but that's the question. I think it can be a cooperative program. Intervention comes when there's resistance and they don't want to accept your help. I look at intervention almost from a negative perspective. Like it's like, well, I've got to force myself on this. But everyone understands what we're getting is when do they need more assistance? And I think that's through deliberate communication, paying attention, knowing what's going on, asking leading questions, things that you're understanding where they're at. There is a level of ongoing communication. I think physically you can recognize more stark contrast in if there's limited visibility, and then you see them, and then you see, oh man, they're really not walking as well or whatever. But I think you start picking up more quickly when you intimately know what's going on in their life. And so I think you can make a better judgment as to when you need to impose or be involved more in their life. And so I don't think there's like an age. I don't think you're like, well, when they're 65, you got to, it's not the case. I think it's just paying attention, using good discernment. And I think it's just loving them enough to want best for them. And that's what I tell my mom. We kind of got into a little tiff yesterday. She was, when am I going to be able to drive again? I'm like, what is it that's so important that you got to go drive right now? Like with a phone call, you can have anything you want delivered. Boy, Robin got all over me. She goes, that was so insensitive. It's important to her to be able to go to church and go.
Freedom's important. Yeah, freedom's important.
I know. I got to go over there tonight and apologize. So that's on my to-do list. I'm like, okay, Mom, I need to apologize. And I will. I'll go over there tonight and apologize. But my point is she knows I want best for her.
Yeah.
She knows that. And I think it just goes back again, common sense, communication, paying attention, loving them enough to ask the right questions, being there for them, supporting them, making the phone calls. When you're, not next door, you have to make more calls and you got to do more FaceTime and you've got to see them more. And it's just being involved, right? And so I don't think, to answer our person's question, when is it time? I think it's just using good discernment and judgment, paying attention, and you can see a pattern.
Yeah, and I don't want to get off this episode today without just being having empathy toward a guy that's listening right now. That's like, man, I've done all the things that you guys are saying, and we obviously we're talking from our own experiences, our own research that we did. Right? Isn't necessarily everything that we know and experience. We've done research to be able to bring some of this stuff to you, talk to other people, and so you may have done a lot of these things, and you're like, man, it's just still not working out, and I'm really struggling. And I think that's why it's so important to have community around you, people around you, whether that's through church, whether that's through a group like ISI Mastermind, wherever it is. You need a good group of people around you that are going to be willing to call you out and address the tough things with you, and to walk with you and to celebrate you and to hold your hand sometimes when you need it. So it is tough, and I have empathy if you're going through it right now, and definitely want you to know, to be encouraged that you're not alone, and if you get some community around you.
Word.
Yeah, get some community around you. Hey, if you need some help in this, please, we don't have all the answers, but we have a lot of resources, and so please reach out to us at P-O-D, at viewfromthetop.com, and we'll do our best to help you discover some resources to help you around this idea of aging parents, and maybe you don't know exactly what to do.
Hey, as you end up listening to our episode today, just a few takeaways to think about. Just really pay attention, regularly assess your aging parents' health, and really establish that open communication with them, as well as, if you get the privilege and the right, to some of their healthcare providers. Oftentimes I'll go and meet with my mom's healthcare provider and just have that open dialogue with them and kind of develop a comprehensive health plan to ensure that they're being well taken care of, and that's where you're going to step up to the plate and really help them through that. I want you to really prioritize their emotional well-being. And you can do that by staying connected, and helping them engage in these activities that we talked about earlier. And even if they need to seek some professional help, help them set that appointment, walk with them through that also. There's going to be some financial concerns. There's going to be legal matters that you're going to have to really look through their finances to ensure that any legal matters and documentations are there for any kind of long-term care. Think through if you've really made that solid effort to make sure that everything is in place there. And we each have a role. My role's different than your role's going to be. We don't have all the answers. We don't know everything. But what we do know is we all love our parents and we want what's best for them. And you get to choose. And hopefully you're going to make the right approach and that you're going to continue to support your parents to the best of your ability, even as they go through this transition. And I promise if you'll do this hard work, the benefits will be huge for your parents. And I want you to do this because, as always, we want you too to have that view from the top.
Hey, thanks so much for listening in today. I know this was a weighty topic, but man, you hung in there, you're here, and hopefully you learned some things that you can apply along the way in your own journey. The easiest way to connect with us, I mentioned, is P-O-D, at viewfromthetop.com. You can also reach out to us and subscribe to our newsletter. It's just once a month. It's called The Climb. If you go to viewfromthetop.com/climb, that's C-L-I-M-B. If you go there and quickly sign up for that, we won't promise we won't spam you. And that simple monthly newsletter has resources in it every month on different topics around family, around business, around finance, specifically for guys that are growth-minded just like you. So please go there, check that out, and you'll be able to get those resources, and that'll be a very helpful tool for you in your journey. And we'll see you next week.